The restaurant smelled like power and pretension, truffle oil, polished marble, and too much perfume. Ryan had rented out the entire rooftop to celebrate our 15th anniversary. Fairy lights hung over the city skyline, and a drone hovered nearby, recording everything for his anniversary vlog. He loved his moments documented. He always said, "If it's not filmed, it didn't happen." I sat across from him, smiling for the camera like a good wife. My heart thudded under the silk of my dress, but my expression stayed picture-perfect. I'd rehearsed this moment down to the breath. The waiter poured champagne, Ryan raised his glass, and his followers flooded the live chat on the tablet set up beside us. Couple goals, marriage inspiration. He's such a keeper. They had no idea. He leaned closer, that charming grin everyone adored. "To the woman who made all of this possible," he said, voice dripping with fake sincerity. The guests, his PR friends, a few influencers and brand reps, applauded politely. My jaw ached from the smile I was forcing. When the clapping died down, I stood up, letting the night air cool my skin. "I have a gift for you too," I said. My tone was light, almost playful. Ryan's eyes gleamed. He loved surprises, especially when they came with an audience. "Oh? You didn't have to, babe," he said, squeezing my hand. The drone drifted closer, capturing his perfect husband act. I reached for the box on the table beside me. Glossy black paper, tied with a red ribbon. I held it up, showing the camera. "This came to the house today," I said, "from an old friend of yours." Ryan frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Go ahead. Open it." He hesitated, glancing around. The guests leaned in. One of them whispered, "Oh, this is gonna be cute." Ryan untied the ribbon, lifted the lid, and froze. Inside, the silk tie rested neatly on tissue paper, folded beside a note. I saw the color drain from his face. The same tie he used to wear on his motivational husband live streams. The same lipstick shade smudged across the paper. He tried to laugh it off. "Oh, wow, this is awkward." "Read it," I said. My voice cut through the murmurs. He looked up, panicked. "Maya, not now." "Read it." The wind picked up, fluttering the note. His hand trembled. When he finally read it aloud, his voice cracked. "To the man who always loved attention. Hope you still wear it well." A few of his influencer buddies exchanged looks. One of them muttered, "Is this a bit?" I smiled thinly. "No bit. Just a message from your ex. The same one you've been texting after midnight. The one who apparently still knows your taste better than your wife does." A hush fell over the rooftop. Even the drone operator looked like he wanted to vanish. Ryan reached for my wrist. "Babe, listen." I pulled back before he could touch me. "Don't." "You wore that tie last week, remember? The night you said you were editing videos at the studio? I found the same lipstick shade on your collar." The waiter standing by the door looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Ryan's perfect posture deflated. His PR manager, a woman in an emerald dress, stood up abruptly, signaling the camera crew to stop filming. Too late. The stream had already gone viral. He tried to salvage it, forcing a laugh. "Guys, it's not what it looks like. My wife's just playing around." "Am I?" I turned to the audience. "Because from where I'm standing, I've been the production assistant in his perfect life show. I built the brand, raised his daughter, handled the bills, while he rehearsed speeches about loyalty." Ryan's jaw tightened. "Enough, Maya." I tilted my head. "You said the same thing when I asked why your phone's locked now." "Enough, Maya. I guess the truth was too expensive for your image." A few guests stood, unsure whether to stay or flee. One of them whispered to another, "Is this for real?" Ryan's mask slipped completely. "You're humiliating me in front of everyone." I met his glare without flinching. "You did that yourself. I'm just turning on the lights." The silence was so sharp it hurt. Somewhere in the background, the drone buzzed like a dying fly. I reached for my clutch, my hands steady now. You wanted attention, Ryan. Congratulations, you have all of it. He followed as I turned to leave. Maya, wait. We can talk. Please, let's not do this here. I spun around. No, let's do it here. You've turned our marriage into content for years. Maybe the truth deserves its own episode. Gasps rippled through the crowd. His PR manager mouthed, "Oh my God," and walked off. I slipped my wedding ring from my finger, dropped it into his champagne glass, and watched the gold sink into the bubbles. You can have your attention back, I said quietly. This time it'll cost you everything. Then I walked out. The elevator doors closed, muffling the chaos behind me. Voices shouting, phones buzzing, glasses clinking. My reflection in the mirrored wall looked almost serene. My pulse slowed. I could finally breathe. As the elevator descended, I thought about the years I spent silencing myself for the sake of his image. How I became the background of his spotlight. That ended tonight. When the doors opened to the lobby, I stepped into the night, heels echoing against the marble floor. The city stretched before me, bright, alive, indifferent. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of screenshots I'd collected over the past month. Every text, every photo, every transfer to her consulting business. My lips curled into the faintest smile. You wanted views, I whispered to myself. Let's give them a show. I deleted the livestream app from my phone, took one last glance at the skyline, and called my lawyer. Tomorrow morning, I said. We start. People always saw Ryan as the golden boy. Polished, articulate, driven. The kind of man who made waiters remember his name and strangers feel lucky to meet him. But I knew the version of him before the spotlight. The one who couldn't afford rent. Who shot YouTube videos in our cluttered kitchen using my phone because he couldn't buy his own. Back then, we were partners. I edited his videos after work while our daughter, Grace, slept on my lap. He'd tell me I was his anchor. I believed it. I worked overtime at the design firm, paid our bills, and smiled through his ego trips because I thought success would calm him down, make him kinder. It didn't. It just made him hungry for more eyes, more validation, more people to tell him he was special. His following grew fast. Thousands, then millions. Brands called, money poured in, and suddenly he was an expert on relationships, the irony so thick it could choke you. I became the quiet shadow behind the camera, the one who ironed his shirts, managed invoices, scheduled posts, and kept the household running. He thanked me publicly, but privately I was too emotional, too controlling, not supportive enough. There were signs, of course. The first time he accidentally called me by another woman's name during a live stream. The sudden need for solo business trips. The shift from late-night cuddles to sleeping back-to-back, like strangers renting the same bed. He said he was just stressed, that fame was pressure I couldn't understand. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe the man I built a life with still existed somewhere behind the ring light. The night I knew something was wrong, Grace was scrolling through her phone on the couch. "Mom," she said, "why is Dad tagged in a photo with some woman at dinner? It says, power couple goals." My stomach twisted. I told her it was probably old, but when I clicked the tag, the timestamp said last night. Same tie, same smile, same restaurant he told me was too pricey for us right now. I confronted him that night. He didn't even deny it, just smirked, like I was being dramatic. It's just networking, Maya. You don't understand how this industry works. I did. I understood perfectly. I just didn't want to face it. A week later, my best friend sent me screenshots. Texts between Ryan and his ex, the same woman who'd left him years ago for a producer. The messages were disgusting. Hotel bookings, pet names, photos. I sat in the bathroom staring at them until my reflection blurred. Grace knocked on the door, asking if I was okay. I said I had a migraine. I lied. That was the night something inside me cracked open. Not the fragile part that loved him. The part that built him. The part that knew exactly how his image worked. How much of his brand relied on my silence, my labor, my loyalty. I realized I didn't have to scream. I just had to move differently. When Grace asked me the next morning if Dad was still our hero, I hugged her so tightly she asked if I was crying. I told her no, but I was. Because she deserved better than a man who performed goodness for strangers and gave cruelty to the people who loved him. That was the moment I stopped being heartbroken. I started taking notes. The morning after the dinner, the house felt like a crime scene. The champagne glasses still sat on the counter, one with my ring at the bottom. The live stream had been clipped, shared, and dissected across every social platform overnight. I didn't even have to speak. The world had already done it for me. Ryan's followers were split between pity and outrage. His brand partners went silent. My phone buzzed nonstop, but I ignored every message. I had work to do. For years, I played the supportive wife. Today, I became the strategist. I started small, logged into our joint account, transferred half the balance into a new one under my name. He wouldn't notice right away. He never looked at statements unless it involved sponsorship money. Then I froze the business account. Every brand payment that used to land smoothly into his content company would now hit a legal wall. I'd learned the system because I built it. I knew every password, every invoice trail, every contract clause that tied his image to mine. By 10 a.m., I was sitting in my car outside my lawyer's office. Not the one we used for tax filings, the one I'd quietly researched 2 weeks earlier when the lipstick first appeared. Her name was Julia Kane, and she didn't waste words. When I told her what happened, she simply said, "We'll make sure you're not the one paying for his performance." We went over everything: assets, property, brand shares, copyrights. Legally, I was co-founder of his company, though he'd convinced me to keep my name off the spotlight. That favor was about to cost him everything. Julia drafted the separation notice, the emergency injunction to freeze joint business transactions, and a restraining clause to block any asset transfers. I signed every document without hesitation. When I got home, Ryan's car was in the driveway. He was pacing the living room, tie loosened, eyes red from stress or lack of sleep. "What the hell did you do?" he snapped before I even closed the door. I walked past him calmly. "I did what you should have done years ago, protected what's mine." He followed me, voice rising. "You froze my accounts? You embarrassed me in front of everyone and now you're sabotaging my business?" I turned, meeting his eyes. "Your business? The one I built from scratch while you played guru online? That business?" He stepped closer. "You're being vindictive, Maya. You'll regret this." "No," I said. "You will." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. I let the silence settle again. It didn't hurt anymore. It energized me. I packed a suitcase for Grace and me, just the essentials. Clothes, documents, her schoolwork. By evening, we were checked into a small serviced apartment downtown. It wasn't home, but it was quiet, and quiet felt like freedom. That night, as Grace slept beside me, I drafted emails to his biggest sponsors. Polite, professional, nothing emotional. I attached a copy of the live stream clip and a brief note about potential reputational risks associated with ongoing partnerships. I didn't threaten, I informed. Let them draw their own conclusions. By morning, the dominoes started falling. His fitness brand paused their contract, pending internal review. His speaking engagement in Miami was rescheduled indefinitely. The man who once built empires from image was watching it crumble, one headline at a time. At noon, my phone rang. It was him. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then I listened. His voice was shaky, desperate. "Maya, please. You're taking this too far. We can fix it. Just come home. For Grace." I deleted it without saving. Julia called later that afternoon. "He's already trying to move assets." My team blocked the transfer in time. "You're safe." I leaned back in the chair, looking out the window at the city lights. "Good," I said. "Let him sweat." That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, opened my laptop, and began organizing the evidence folder. Every receipt, text, voice note, and transaction, chronologically sorted. Proof of betrayal, proof of manipulation, proof of every lie he'd monetized. This time, I wasn't the assistant cleaning up his mess. I was the author of his downfall, and tomorrow he'd realize the show wasn't over. It was just under new management. The morning the first sponsor pulled out, I was brushing Grace's hair. She hummed through her teeth, completely unaware that the world we'd known was rearranging itself. I didn't tell her. She already had enough to carry. Instead, I told my lawyer to document everything, and I answered emails with the same steady calm I used to use on design briefs. It happened fast after that. Brands paused, then dropped. Agencies flagged risk exposure. A podcast host canceled his weekly slot. A venue called to say they were looking for a different keynote for their summit. The headlines weren't dramatic, just a dozen careful corporate statements. But when you strip away partnerships and speaking dates, you strip away the scaffolding of a man who built himself on applause. Fans turned first to confusion, then to fury, then to schadenfreude. Comment sections became tribunals. The slick, curated feed he used to cultivate his image filled with screenshots, archived stories, and people who dug up older posts showing contradictions between his family-first persona and the late-night check-ins he'd claimed were networking. His phone, his lifeline, buzzed until it was a blur. I saw the notifications through the window of our old house when I stopped by to collect a few things. PR emails, frantic DMs from influencers trying to decide whether to distance themselves, and a string of voicemail transcriptions that read like a funeral for his career. "Please don't. We need to talk. How could you?" One of the messages was from a brand manager who used to gush about him publicly. Now the tone was icy. "We can't be associated with this. Effective immediately." The word effective felt like a verdict. The mistress, if that label sat roughly in my throat, it was because nobody had given her a better title, vanished. At first, she tried to salvage it, deleted nothing, posted a breathless story about taking a break, and left a pale echo of curated happiness. Then her account, public, follower-heavy, went private. Then it was gone. People whispered that she'd been doxxed, that someone found her business address, that a friend of hers was getting calls from angry clients wondering why their consultant had been tied to a scandal. She scrolled into obscurity like a file on a hard drive you don't open anymore. Friends and acquaintances reacted with the kind of arithmetic that reveals true loyalties. Some multiplied, some divided. A few subtracted themselves entirely. His brother, quiet, practical, the one who used to laugh and elbow him at family events, texted clear, measured sentences that hinted at disappointment rather than support. His father stopped returning messages. Family group chats that used to be full of smug selfies and holiday plans shrank into silence. That silence was heavier than any argument. There were also people who showed up. Not the ones who asked for favors when the camera was on, but the ones who saw the footage and stepped into the gap. His mother called me, voice small and embarrassed, apologizing for things she'd once laughed off. "We didn't see it," she said. "We thought—" Her sentences had the smell of regret. She asked to meet. I let her. There was a short, awkward coffee where she handed me an envelope with an apology written on cheap stationery. It wasn't about absolution. It was about recognition. She called her son later that week and told him carefully that her grandchildren came first. Meanwhile, commentary shows and online threads fed on the spectacle. Someone dug up an old interview where he'd said, "Integrity is my North Star." The clip looped like a gag in a sketch show, viewers overlaying sarcastic captions and memes. He was becoming a caricature. His words turned into evidence, his smile into a punchline. His followers who had once defended him turned into the loudest chorus of betrayal. People who had sent him DMs asking for life advice now used his own tactics against him, calling out hypocrisy, demanding refunds from his workshops, posting receipts. He tried to flex control. He posted an apology video, scripted, eyes wet on cue. The kind of performance that used to win hearts. I watched it muted, reading the lips, seeing how practiced the pauses were. The comments were brutal. Too little, too staged, one read. "We were fooled," another said. He uploaded a follow-up where he blamed miscommunication and pledged to do better. The follow-up did worse. At home, the air between us was no longer charged with the old electric possibility. It was just static. He called, paced, and finally knocked on the door of the apartment I'd rented. He stood there at the elevator, a man unmoored, looking exhausted in a way the camera had never captured. His suit hung off him oddly, the tailoring mocking him because it had never defined him. "Please," he said when I opened the door, voice raw. "Maya, please, we can fix this. For grace. Don't make this harder than it already is." I watched him for a long second. The man who asked for fame had become the man who begged for privacy. The contrast was almost comedic if it hadn't been so devastating. "You made it hard," I said simply. "You made it loud. You made it public. I'm not the one who started the show." He stepped closer, reaching for my hand. His fingers trembled. "I'll pay. I'll fix it. Name your price." I stepped back. The apartment smelled of laundry detergent and the faint trace of Grace's lavender lotion. I pictured Grace asleep in the next room, safe and unaware. I remembered the nights I stayed up editing his videos, the arguments I swallowed, the daughter I raised while he chased validation. "This isn't about money," I said. "This is about responsibility." He swallowed. His eyes darted to the phone in my hand. Proof, patience, evidence stacked in neat files. For the first time, panic replaced arrogance entirely. "Then what do you want?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked at him, and I felt no pity, only a clear, cold resolve. "I want you to understand the cost," I said. "And I want you to feel what it is to lose the thing you thought you owned." He stood there, the lobby lights reflecting off his face, and for a second he looked small enough to fit into the palm of my hand. Then he turned and walked away, leaving his shadow across the marble floor. Behind him, the world took one more click and moved on to the next scandal. But this one had teeth, and every tooth left a mark. 2 months after the rooftop implosion, Ryan decided to crawl back into the spotlight. He'd gone quiet for weeks. No posts, no live streams, no daily motivation clips. Then, one morning, his face appeared again. A new video. A fresh start. He titled it, "Owning My Mistakes." It was the same script every disgraced influencer used. Apologize vaguely, shift the blame gently, then pivot to redemption. The comments were mostly cynical, but a handful of loyal followers called him brave. That was enough to fuel him. Within days, he started tagging himself at events again, dressed in that same confident armor, tailored suits, watch flashing under the lights. He thought time had softened the damage, but I was waiting. When I heard he'd been invited to a high-profile charity gala downtown, I called Julia. "Can I go?" I asked. She laughed softly. "Legally, yes. Emotionally, depends what you plan to do." "I plan to let the truth speak for itself," I said. The night of the gala, I wore the same white satin dress from our wedding. Not out of nostalgia, but symbolism. Clean. Final. I tied my hair back, simple makeup, a single diamond earring. The pair he'd once gifted me after closing his first brand deal. The second earring I'd sold, just to fund the initial legal fees. It felt poetic. When I walked into the ballroom, heads turned, not because of beauty or fame, but recognition. Everyone there had seen the rooftop video. Some whispered, some looked away. Others smiled politely with the cautious sympathy people reserve for survivors of public scandal. Ryan was near the stage, shaking hands with a board member, pretending not to notice the sea of eyes dissecting him. When he finally saw me, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Then he masked it, the professional charmer slipping back into place. "Maya," he said, voice smooth but tight. "Didn't expect to see you here." "I know," I replied. "You usually prefer your women uninvited." A few nearby guests caught the jab and froze mid-sip. He laughed awkwardly. "Still dramatic, I see. Still dishonest," I said softly. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, We don't need to do this here. This is a charity event. Perfect place, I said. You've always loved pretending to give. Before he could answer, a reporter approached, one of the same journalists who had covered the fallout. Maya Peterson? She asked, microphone in hand. Would you like to comment on your husband's latest video about reconciliation and forgiveness? Ryan visibly tensed. No, let's not. I smiled sweetly. Sure, I said. The reporter raised her mic. What do you think of his message? I looked right into the camera. I think forgiveness starts with truth, and truth isn't something you edit for views. The air crackled. Ryan's face tightened, the PR smile dying. I continued. He built a career preaching authenticity while living a lie. I don't hate him. I just want people to stop buying the illusion that public men sell when they call their deception mistakes. Lies aren't mistakes. They're investments in manipulation. Someone near the bar clapped quietly. Others followed. The applause spread like wildfire, polite but sharp. Ryan's jaw locked. That's enough, he hissed under his breath. You've made your point. Not yet, I said. I stepped forward, still calm. To the people who think this is gossip, it's not. It's a reminder. The women who hold everything together behind the scenes deserve credit, not blame. Some of us build the foundations you dance on. I could feel every lens pointed at me, every phone recording. I wasn't trembling this time. I was steady, like glass cooled after fire. Ryan whispered harshly, "You're humiliating yourself." I leaned closer, just enough for him to hear. No, Ryan, I'm just finishing what you started. The reporter, sensing gold, asked, So, no chance of reconciliation? I smiled. Reconciliation? I reconciled the books, the assets, the lies. Everything's balanced now. A few guests laughed, nervous but genuine. I turned to leave, but then I paused, facing the crowd one last time. He always said honesty was sexy, I said. I guess he finally learned how unattractive lies can be. That line landed like a thunderclap. Phones flashed, whispers exploded. Within minutes, it was trending online. Honesty is sexy. Memes, captions, think pieces. Overnight, the phrase became a viral slogan used by women calling out their cheating partners, corrupt bosses, and fake mentors. By the next morning, Ryan's management team released a statement saying he was stepping back from public life to focus on personal healing. Translation: the sponsors that hadn't already fled were now gone. The mistress resurfaced briefly online, posting a cryptic story, something about choosing peace. It backfired immediately. Her comments filled with honesty, sexy quotes, and screenshots of her old flirtations. She disappeared again, this time for good. That night, as I lay in bed beside Grace, who'd fallen asleep watching a movie, I scrolled through the hashtag feed. Women everywhere were sharing their stories, their strength. Not about me, not really. About what they'd endured and how they'd finally walked away. Ryan had wanted a legacy built on admiration. He got one built on warning. And I didn't have to say another word. The world was speaking for me now. By the time the hashtag hit 1 million views, Ryan was already bleeding credibility. Every news outlet wanted a piece of him, some to mock, some to redeem. Predictably, he chose the one thing he understood best: control the narrative. He booked a TV interview. Soft lighting, neutral tones, the host known for empathy journalism. The headline teased, "Ryan Peterson breaks his silence." I didn't plan to watch, but curiosity has its own gravity. He sat there in a beige suit, eyes glassy, voice measured. "I made mistakes," he said, "but I've been painted as a monster by people who don't know the full story." Then came the pivot. "My wife is a brilliant woman, but she's angry, and anger can distort reality." We were both broken. Classic deflection, gaslight in a velvet box. He talked about forgiveness, growth, and how online hate can destroy a man. The host nodded sympathetically. The audience applauded at all the right cues. For a brief moment, he looked like he was winning again. But image control is a delicate thing. One crack, and the entire illusion collapses. That crack came 12 hours later. A small gossip account on X posted a video compilation titled, "Ryan Peterson, The Untold Truth." It wasn't my doing, but someone had clearly been collecting receipts. Old texts, leaked emails, private DMs with fans, even voice notes bragging about how he could spin anything to sound noble. It spread like wildfire. The internet doesn't forgive hypocrisy, it devours it. Within hours, the clip hit 1 million views. Then 2 hashtags flipped. Honesty is sexy evolved into Noxy Ryan the Manipulator. His apology video became a meme format. Brands that had quietly paused contracts now issued public denouncements. The TV network deleted his interview replay for policy reasons. Julia called that night. "You didn't leak those, did you?" I laughed quietly. "No, but I'm glad someone did." Ryan tried to fight back. He released a shaky live stream from his living room, unshaven, trying to look humble. "The internet has gone too far," he said. "I'm being harassed. My privacy's gone." His comment section filled instantly. "You built your fame on exposure. Now live with it." Then came the final blow. A former assistant, someone who had worked with us during the early brand years, posted a long thread confirming everything. She explained how I'd handled the business back end while Ryan took all public credit. She attached screenshots showing my name on the original contracts, the invoices with my email signature, the trademark filings I'd done under his company. She didn't call it revenge. She called it truth. The internet rallied. Overnight, narratives flipped again. The betrayed wife who built the brand. Editorials ran headlines like, "Behind every influencer, there's an unpaid woman." My inbox flooded with interview requests. I turned them all down. I didn't need to say a thing. Ryan, meanwhile, started posting erratic messages, cryptic, self-pitying, sometimes quoting scripture, sometimes blaming cancel culture. People stopped responding with empathy. They responded with screenshots. His follower count plummeted. A fan page turned into an archive of his hypocrisy. The PR agencies that once chased him now ghosted him. His speaking engagements were canceled. The house went on the market, his desperate attempt to liquidate before the court froze more assets. Grace saw one of the memes at school. Her classmates whispered about it. When she got home, she asked, "Is Dad really that bad?" I sat beside her and told the truth. He made choices that hurt people. And when people don't tell the truth, sometimes the world tells it for them. She nodded slowly. "So we're safe now?" I smiled. "Yes, we're safe." But safety wasn't enough for me anymore. I wanted closure. Not vengeance, not noise, just an ending written on my terms. That night, I deleted every trace of him from my social feeds. No mentions, no pictures, no passive-aggressive quotes. Just silence. Real silence. The next morning, headlines screamed about his mental health break and temporary retreat from social media. But even in retreat, he couldn't resist control. His final post read, "Sometimes people only love your image, not your heart." For once, the comments weren't cruel. They were indifferent. And indifference, I realized, was the truest death of fame. I closed the app, breathed in, and smiled. He'd spent years building an empire on validation. Now, stripped of it, he had nothing left to perform for. The PR war was over. The silence that followed was mine. And it was the most powerful sound I'd ever heard. The courtroom didn't look like vengeance. It looked like order. White walls, cold air, and the hum of printers. Ryan sat 2 tables away, smaller than I'd ever seen him. His once perfect posture was gone. His suit looked borrowed, wrinkled at the shoulders. He kept his head down as the judge read through the list of assets, properties, brand accounts, sponsorships, the company I had co-founded but never publicly owned. Julia stood beside me, calm and lethal. Every document we'd built, every transfer he'd hidden, every clause he thought I didn't understand, it all surfaced in that room. Ryan tried to argue that the brand was his personal creation, Julia simply raised an eyebrow and pulled out the original LLC paperwork, with my signature, dated years before his first viral post. The judge nodded. Then it appears Mrs. Peterson is entitled to full intellectual and financial ownership. Ryan's lawyer whispered something frantic. His jaw clenched. That's not fair, he blurted. She didn't build the audience. Julia didn't even flinch. She built the business that paid for it. The gavel hit once. The decision was made. Half the assets reverted to me. Our home, the car, the company rights, the sponsorship revenue still frozen in escrow. The rest went to debt settlements and legal fees. Ryan would leave with personal belongings and whatever pride he had left, which wasn't much. He looked at me then, across the room. The same man who once filmed morning affirmations about gratitude now looked hollow. There was no rage, just disbelief. The slow realization that the empire he built on image had been stripped bare by reality. When it ended, I walked past him without a word. Outside the courthouse, the sky was clear, the kind of blue that feels earned. Reporters shouted questions, but I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Silence, I'd learned, could be louder than confession. The following week, Ryan's father called me. The man who once ignored my opinions at family dinners sounded different, quiet, almost ashamed. I owe you an apology, he said. We thought he was the success story. Turns out you were. He paused. He's staying with his brother now. Don't worry, he won't come near you. I didn't respond to that last part. I wasn't worried. Not anymore. The brother, who had defended Ryan through every scandal, finally withdrew his support after the leaks showed stolen funds. Money Ryan had quietly funneled from their joint family trust to pay off brand partnerships. The betrayal reached home. Even his own family saw through him now. The mistress resurfaced briefly in the legal paperwork, a restraining order. She'd sent Ryan threatening messages after discovering he'd used her name to sign fake invoices. The court added her to the witness list, then struck her off when she fled the state. Every pillar he leaned on collapsed in sequence: career, money, reputation, family. He became a ghost in headlines. Former influencer faces bankruptcy. Peterson brand shuts down operations. Ex-wife gains full custody. Grace took the news with a kind of maturity that broke and healed me at once. I don't hate him, she said one night, but I don't miss him either. I smiled faintly. That's enough. You don't have to feel anything more. By the end of the year, the house title carried only my name. The company name changed. The accounts reopened under new branding. Quiet, legitimate, mine. And Ryan? He vanished from the public eye. The man who once sold millions on visibility had learned the punishment of irrelevance. When I signed the final document, Julia leaned over and said, "You understand you've won, right?" I nodded, staring at my signature. "No," I said. "I've reclaimed." The difference mattered. Because revenge ends, but reclamation, that lives forever. It was almost a year to the day since the rooftop dinner, the night I'd walked away from a marriage built on lies and filters. I hadn't seen Ryan since the court ruling. No calls, no texts, just absence, thick and echoing. Then, one Thursday afternoon, Julia called. "He's requested a meeting," she said. My stomach tightened. "For what?" She sighed. "He says it's about closure. He's not doing well. Lost everything. Living in a rented room in Westfield. He wants to apologize in person." "Closure," I repeated. The word tasted like dust. I could have ignored him, but something in me, call it curiosity, call it the need for a clean ending, wanted to see what remained of the man I once believed in. We met at the same cafe where he'd first told me he loved me 15 years ago. Back then, he'd brought me a bouquet of wildflowers, nervous and sincere. This time, he arrived empty-handed, wearing a thrift store jacket, his eyes dimmed with exhaustion. The man who once glowed under camera lights now looked drained, like the color had been wrung out of him. He spotted me instantly. "Maya," he said, voice soft, almost breaking. I nodded. "Ryan." He sat down slowly, fidgeting with the edge of a paper napkin. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the espresso machine filled the silence between us. Finally, he exhaled. "You look good. Peaceful." "I am," I said simply. He nodded, eyes dropping. "You deserve that." I waited. I wasn't there for small talk. He rubbed his hands together, the skin rougher than I remembered. "I don't even know where to start. Everything's gone. Career, house, reputation. Even my family won't answer my calls. Grace doesn't want to see me. She's healing," I said quietly. "That takes time." He nodded again, swallowing hard. "I know. I did this. I made the choices that got me here. I told myself I could fix everything with charm like I always did. But there's no audience left to clap anymore." He laughed weakly, but it sounded hollow. "Do you want forgiveness?" I asked. He hesitated. "I don't know if I deserve it." "You don't," I said, calm but direct. "But that's not the same as saying you can't learn from it." He leaned forward, desperation flickering behind his eyes. "I think about you every day, about how blind I was. I didn't see what I had until I destroyed it. You were my foundation, Maya. I built everything on you, and then I tore it down myself." I studied him. For the first time in years, there was no arrogance, no performance. Just the truth, the kind that burns on its way out. "Do you remember what you said to me the night I walked out?" I asked. He frowned. "I said a lot of things I regret. You said, 'You'll regret this, Maya.'" I paused. "And you were half right. I did regret it, for about a week. Then I realized regret was just another word for attachment, and I was done being attached to your chaos." He looked away, blinking fast. "I don't expect you to ever trust me again. I just needed you to know I'm sorry. Genuinely. For everything. For how I made you small to make myself feel bigger. For dragging you into my image." The apology landed softly, but not deeply. It was late, but real. I nodded once. "I accept that." He looked relieved. "So we can, what, be civil?" "I'm not angry anymore, Ryan," I said. "But I'm not interested in being your redemption arc. You had your stage. This is my life now." He leaned back, eyes glassy. "I miss Grace," he whispered. "I know," I said. "She'll reach out when she's ready. You can't rush healing any more than you can rush forgiveness." He smiled faintly, then shook his head. "You always were the strong one." "No," I said. "I just stopped letting weakness look like love." The silence that followed felt heavier than words. He stared at his hands, trembling slightly. The man across from me was a shadow of the empire he'd built. A king without a crown. A voice without an audience. And yet, for the first time, I saw a flicker of humanity in him. The kind that doesn't perform. The kind that finally feels. He cleared his throat. "You won, Maya." I looked at him steadily. It wasn't about winning. It was about ending what was broken. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, as if realizing there was nothing left to argue. After a long moment, he reached into his pocket and placed a folded piece of paper on the table. "This was from Grace's last birthday," he said. "I bought it months before everything happened, never gave it to her." I unfolded it carefully. A small card with a drawing of the three of us at the beach, stick figures smiling under the sun. Inside, in his handwriting, "For my girls, my reason for everything." For a second, something tugged inside me. Not love, just memory. I closed the card, placed it back on the table, and pushed it toward him. "You can give it to her yourself when she's ready. Not before." He nodded slowly, eyes glassy. "Okay." We sat there for another minute, not as enemies, not even as exes. Just two people staring at the aftermath of what they'd built and broken. When I stood to leave, he looked up quickly. "Maya?" I turned. His voice cracked. "Do you hate me?" I shook my head. "No. Hate's still a kind of love, Ryan. I'm free of both." He exhaled, as if that truth hurt more than anger ever could. I smiled faintly, picked up my purse, and said the last words I'd ever say to him. You wanted to live for attention. Now, you get to live with yourself. Then I walked out of the cafe into the late afternoon sun. The light hit my face like warmth reborn. Clean, unfiltered, earned. I didn't look back. Behind me, the bell over the door chimed once, soft and final. And just like that, the story ended where it began. Not with betrayal, but with truth. 1 year later, the past felt like someone else's story. Not erased, just distant, softened by time and meaning. I still lived in the same city, but everything about my life had changed rhythm. Mornings no longer began with tension. They began with quiet coffee, sunlight through open windows, and music instead of notifications. Grace and I had moved into a smaller house by the coast. White walls, wooden floors, the smell of salt in the air. She had her own space now, an art desk by the window, where she spent hours painting scenes from memory. Sometimes I'd watch her in silence and realize she no longer carried that cautious sadness in her eyes. She laughed more. She trusted her world again. As for me, I'd turned my pain into purpose. The business I once built in Ryan's shadow had become something else entirely. After the divorce, I rebranded the company under a new name, Reclaim Studio. No flashy slogans, no filters, just real women, real stories, and real work. We helped female entrepreneurs rebuild their financial independence after breakups, divorces, or betrayals. My first clients were women who DM'd me after the scandal. Wives, single mothers, even young professionals who saw a bit of themselves in my silence. It grew faster than I expected. Not because I chased attention, but because authenticity doesn't need marketing. It just needs truth. Sometimes reporters still reached out, wanting a comment about the Ryan Peterson saga. I always declined. I wasn't interested in being the ex-wife who took down a public figure. I wanted to be known as the woman who built something stronger from the ashes. The last time I accidentally saw Ryan's name was in a headline buried deep online. Former influencer declares bankruptcy, moves out of state. No picture, no fanfare, just a quiet ending to a loud life. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or triumph, just peace. People get the lives they construct, brick by brick, choice by choice. He built his with vanity. I rebuilt mine with clarity. On the anniversary of that rooftop night, Grace and I went back to the city. She wanted to see the ocean from the old pier where we used to walk when she was little. It was late afternoon, the sky brushed with pink and gold, the air full of salt and memory. She leaned against the railing and said, "Mom, I think you're happy now." I smiled. "You think so?" She nodded. "You look lighter, like you don't carry him anymore." "I don't," I said softly. "He's just a chapter." We turned the page. She was quiet for a while, watching the horizon. I used to think people who leave are bad, but I get it now. Sometimes leaving isn't giving up. It's growing up. Her words hit deeper than she realized. "Exactly," I said. "Sometimes love teaches you what you deserve by showing you what you don't." We stayed there until the sun slipped below the water, the light scattering into gold ripples. It felt like closure without ceremony. No grand speeches, no revenge left to burn. Just life, finally uncluttered. When we got home, I walked into my office. My real office, not the corner of someone else's empire. Framed on the wall was the very first invoice I'd ever written under my own name. It wasn't worth much money, but it meant freedom. Beneath it, a small brass plaque Julia had gifted me after the court victory. It read simply, "Reclamation is the art of remembering your worth." That night, I opened my journal for the first time in months. I used to write about survival. Now I wrote about creation. My last entry began like this. "Forgiveness is not letting someone back in. It's letting yourself out." I closed the book, feeling something I hadn't felt in years, stillness without emptiness. Before bed, I scrolled through Grace's newest paintings. One caught my attention, A simple watercolor of a woman standing by the sea, her hair loose, her back to the horizon. The caption she'd written below it read, "Freedom doesn't mean running away. It means standing where you are and no longer shaking." I stared at it for a long time, tears prickling but gentle, not heavy. Ryan's shadow no longer lingered. Not in the headlines, not in my thoughts, not even in my anger. He'd faded into the background noise of lessons learned and debts paid. What remained was the woman I had almost forgotten, the one who built, endured, broke, and rebuilt. In the quiet, I realized something profound. Revenge had never been my ending. Liberation was. When I turned off the light, the house didn't feel empty. It felt alive. Grace's laughter echoed faintly from her room. The ocean hummed outside, steady and eternal. And for the first time, I didn't dream about what was lost. I dreamed about what comes next.